Hi, I'm Michele White, Associate Executive Director of FASA. And this week we have Jessica Janasiewicz, FASA's lobbyist, joining me for a conversation about what happened last week during session. So thank you for joining us, Jess.
Thanks for having me.
So last week we had some committee meetings, House and Senate Education, and tell us a little bit about maybe something that the House focused on in pre-K to 12 innovation.
Sure. So one of the bills that they heard was dealing with school board term limits. We've seen this bill for a number of years now, and one of the stumbling blocks is because it is actually going to be something that would be put onto the ballot for voters to vote on. It has a higher level of requirement, so it has to go through the committees on both sides, and then it has to be passed by 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate in order to make it on the ballot.
Wow.
So that's been a barrier that we've seen in the last couple of years. But it was in fact heard in the House committee, its first committee this week. There are other committee stops, and there is a Senate version that we expect to be heard next week as well.
Okay, great. So maybe some of our members coming for legislative days would get to see that, and that would be exciting. The second committee that we really focused on this last week was the Senate Education Committee, and they had multiple bills on the agenda, of course. Two in particular I wanted to focus on. One was on the recommendations from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission. Can you tell us a little bit about what's included in that legislation?
Sure. So it's a pretty expansive bill. As you might imagine, we've had the commission, and then also we've had some grand jury reports. So there's been a lot of recommendations that have been floating around out there, and this is the first stab at it for the Senate. And it does a number of things. One of the things it requires is that school districts have a reunification plans for students with their families if in the event of a tragedy or any emergency situation. It also requires that school safety officers, so these would be the folks, these are not our SROs, not our guardians, but those potentially off-duty police officers, that sort of thing, or any of your district police officers, take some mental health crisis training. That is something that is required of SROs, but it is not currently a requirement for those other officers, so obviously they want everyone to kind of be on the same page. There are also some recommendations with regard to the mental health allocation that was part of that school safety bill. That continues to be a focus because, as I'm sure our members are experiencing in their schools, we're seeing higher and higher rates of mental health crisis among our students, and anything we can do to prevent that is a positive thing.
Absolutely, and that was passed favorably out of that committee, and it will go on to at least have one, maybe two more hearings before it goes to the Senate floor.
Correct.
The other bill that they heard was Senate Bill 1220 by Senator Manny Diaz, and that bill was actually amended to include some language from another bill that he had on professional development. Can you talk about some of the things that are included in there?
Sure. So it's on our radar for a number of reasons. The first being is it is a bill to be entitled Education, which is always a big kind of flashing light for us that it could be one of those train bills that we've seen the last couple of years that we end up with. So as you mentioned, it started out as a small bill, and now there are a bunch of things on there. There are some requirements with regard to teacher certification, which is of course something that FASA has focused on. One thing that I think is positive in particular is it has some language that would allow teachers with a bachelor's degree, if they have 10 years of experience, to be considered to have that kind of master's level experience. So that would be positive for those teachers. Even if they haven't gone and gotten that advanced degree, they could still get some of that extra certification, if you will. And then with professional development, which is a big focus for us, there are a lot of interesting things in there. One is it would require districts to have a proportional share of professional development. That's something that's really different. Right. It would require the department to keep a list of kind of approved providers so that when teachers and districts are out there looking for professional development, they have something to choose from that they know is quality. So there's a lot in there, and certainly something we'll watch in particular with our priorities, and professional development being one of them.
Absolutely, and FASA provides more professional development than I think any other education association across the state, certainly to administrators. So it's something that we've been focused on and really stressing to our legislators as we meet on FASA being a resource for them. So thank you so much, and that is our update this week, and check out more information in the Advocate below, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.